I stood on the rooftop of Sterling Industries, my company, watching the city lights flicker below like scattered diamonds. 3 years ago, I left this place with nothing but a broken heart and empty pockets. Mary had stood in front of everyone at the annual charity gala and declared that I was nobody, just a poor assistant chasing dreams too big for my small life. She said I would never amount to anything without her family's name attached to mine. The crowd had laughed. Her friends had mocked. And I had walked away in silence, swallowing every ounce of humiliation. Tonight, I returned as the founder and chief executive officer of the fastest growing tech empire in the country. Forbes called me the youngest self-made millionaire of the year. Business journals wrote features about my rise from nothing. Investment firms begged for meetings. And Mary? She had no idea that the man she destroyed was the same man now holding the keys to her family's survival. My phone buzzed. It was an email from Harrison Enterprises, Mary's family company. They were requesting a partnership meeting, desperate to save their sinking business. I smiled. Cold and calculated. They had no clue who they were dealing with. The nobody she humiliated had become the somebody they now needed. I remembered the exact words she had said that night. David, you are nothing without me. You have no future, no value, no worth. Go back to wherever you came from and stop embarrassing yourself. Her voice had been sharp, cutting through me like glass. Her friends had clapped. George, her new boyfriend, had smirked and pulled her close, whispering something that made her laugh. That laugh haunted me for months. But I did not break. I left the city, worked 3 jobs, slept 4 hours a night, studied coding until my eyes bled, and built something from absolute zero. Every rejection fueled me. Every sleepless night sharpened my focus. Every memory of her dismissive smile became another reason to prove her wrong. Now, the tables had turned. And tomorrow, I would walk into that meeting room and watch her realize exactly who I had become. Revenge was not just about success. It was about making sure the person who destroyed you saw every single piece of what they lost. I took one last look at the city and whispered to myself, let the game begin. 3 years earlier, I was a different man. My name is David, and back then, I was just another face in the crowd, working as a junior project assistant at Harrison Enterprises. The job did not pay much, but it kept me alive. I lived in a cramped studio apartment on the east side, where the walls were thin and the neighbors were loud. Every morning, I took 2 buses to work, carrying a thermos of cheap coffee and a dream that felt more distant with each passing day. Mary Harrison was the golden daughter of the Harrison family, a name that carried weight in every boardroom and country club in the city. She was beautiful in the way that made people stop and stare, with sharp green eyes, perfect posture, and a smile that could either warm you or freeze you depending on her mood. Her family owned Harrison Enterprises, a real estate and investment firm that had been in business for over 40 years. Everyone knew the Harrisons. Everyone respected them. And everyone knew that Mary was destined to inherit it all. I met her during a company orientation event. She was giving a speech about innovation and legacy, and I was sitting in the back row, barely paying attention. But when she finished and walked past me, she dropped her folder, papers scattered everywhere. I helped her pick them up. She looked at me, surprised, and said thank you. That was it. That was the moment everything started. We started talking after that. Small conversations at first. She would ask me about my work, and I would ask her about hers. She seemed genuinely interested in my ideas, my thoughts, my perspective. I was shocked. Someone like her, paying attention to someone like me. It felt unreal, but it also felt good. For the first time in my life, I felt seen. Weeks turned into months. We started meeting outside of work. Coffee shops, quiet restaurants, late-night walks through the park. She told me about the pressure of being a Harrison, the expectations, the constant judgment. I told her about my struggles, my past, my dreams of building something meaningful. She listened. She laughed at my jokes. She made me feel like I mattered. I fell in love with her. Completely. Stupidly. Hopelessly. One night, under the stars, I told her I wanted to start my own company someday. She smiled and said, I believe in you, David. You are going to do amazing things. I held her hand and thought, this is it. This is the person I want to spend my life with. But I did not know the truth. I did not know that to her, I was just a phase. A rebellion against her family's expectations. A distraction from the life she was supposed to live. Her family did not approve of me. Her father, Richard Harrison, made that clear the first time I met him. He looked at me like I was dirt on his expensive shoes. He asked me what I did, where I came from, what my plans were. I answered honestly. He laughed. Not a warm laugh. A condescending, dismissive laugh. He turned to Mary and said, "You cannot be serious about this boy." She said nothing. She just looked down. Her mother, Elizabeth, was worse. She smiled sweetly, but her words were poison. "David, dear. You seem like a nice young man. But you have to understand, Mary has a certain standard to maintain. I am sure you can see that this is not going to work long term." I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but Mary squeezed my hand and whispered, "Just ignore them. We will figure it out." But we never did. George entered the picture around that time. He was everything I was not. Tall, polished, wealthy, connected. His family owned a chain of luxury hotels. He had gone to the best schools, traveled the world, and spoke 3 languages. He was perfect. And Mary's family loved him. I started noticing changes. Mary became distant. She canceled plans. She stopped answering my calls as quickly. When I asked her what was wrong, she said she was just busy. I believed her because I wanted to. I needed to. Then came the charity gala. It was the biggest event of the year. Everyone who was anyone attended. Mary invited me. I thought it meant something. I thought she was ready to stand by me in front of everyone. I bought a suit I could not afford and showed up with hope in my chest. But the moment I walked in, I felt out of place. Everyone was dressed in designer clothes, dripping in jewelry, holding champagne glasses like they were born with them in their hands. I tried to blend in, but I stood out like a stain on white silk. Mary was surrounded by people. George was next to her, his hand on her waist. She was laughing, glowing, confident. I walked up to her. She saw me and her smile faded. I said hello. She nodded. George looked me up and down and smirked. I tried to talk to her, to ask her why she had been avoiding me. But she cut me off. "David, not here. Not now." I felt my chest tighten. I asked her what was going on. She sighed, annoyed. She looked around, then back at me. And that is when she said the words that shattered me. "David, I think we need to be realistic. You are a great guy, but let us be honest. You are not going anywhere. You have no money, no connections, no future. I cannot keep pretending this is going to work. You are nobody. And I need somebody." The room went silent. People turned to look. George laughed. Her friends whispered. I stood there, frozen, humiliated, destroyed. She did not even look sorry. She just turned away and walked back to George, leaving me standing alone in the middle of that glittering crowd. I left that night and never looked back. The days after the gala were the darkest of my life. I stopped going to work. I could not face the stares, the whispers, the pity. Everyone had heard what happened. The story spread through the office like wildfire. David got dumped by Mary Harrison at the gala. Poor guy. He actually thought he had a chance. I could hear them laughing even when they were not. I stayed in my apartment for a week, curtains drawn, lights off, phone silenced. I replayed that night over and over in my head. Her words echoed like a curse. "You are nobody. You are nobody. You are nobody." I wanted to scream. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to prove her wrong, but I did not know how. On the 8th day, I received a call from Human Resources. They told me my position had been terminated. No explanation, no severance. Just a cold, corporate goodbye. I knew why. Mary's family owned the company. They wanted me gone. I was an embarrassment, a reminder of her bad decision. So they erased me. I had no job, no savings, no plan. I sat on the floor of my empty apartment and stared at the ceiling. For the first time in my life, I felt truly hopeless. I thought about giving up, about going back to my hometown and accepting that maybe Mary was right. Maybe I was nobody. But then something inside me snapped. It was not hope. It was anger. Pure, burning, unstoppable anger. I was not going to let her win. I was not going to let them erase me. I was going to become someone so powerful, so successful, so undeniable that they would choke on their own words. I sold everything I owned. My furniture, my clothes, my laptop. I scraped together every dollar I had and bought a one-way ticket to Silicon Valley. I had no connections there, no friends, no safety net. But I had an idea. A software concept I had been working on for years. A platform that could revolutionize project management for small businesses. I had shown it to a few people before, and they had brushed it off. But I believed in it. And belief was all I had left. I arrived in Silicon Valley with $200 in my pocket and a backpack full of clothes. I slept on couches, in hostels, in my car when I finally bought a cheap, used one. I worked 3 jobs. I delivered food during the day, cleaned offices at night, and coated in between. I lived on instant noodles and black coffee. I did not sleep more than 4 hours a night. My body ached. My eyes burned. But I kept going. I met people. Other dreamers, other fighters, other nobodies trying to become somebody. I pitched my idea to anyone who would listen. Most ignored me. Some laughed. A few listened. One person believed. His name was Eric, a former engineer who had made and lost a fortune in the dot-com era. He saw something in me, or maybe he just saw himself. He gave me $5,000 and said, "Do not waste it." I did not. I used that money to build the first version of my software. It was rough, clunky, far from perfect. But it worked. I launched it online with zero marketing budget. I posted about it on forums, sent cold emails to small business owners, begged people to try it. For weeks, nothing happened. Then one person signed up. Then 5. Then 50. Then 500. Word spread. People loved it. It was simple, affordable, effective. Everything the big corporate tools were not. Within 6 months, I had 10,000 users. Within a year, 100,000. Investors started reaching out. Venture capital firms wanted meetings. I went from nobody to the next big thing. But I did not forget. Every success, every milestone, every dollar I earned, I remembered why I was doing it. I remembered Mary's face. I remembered George's smirk. I remembered the laughter. And I used it as fuel. 2 years in, I sold my first company for $12 million. I could have retired. But I did not. I took that money and started another company. Bigger. Bolder. Riskier. This one focused on artificial intelligence solutions for enterprises. It exploded. Within a year, we were valued at $200 million. The press called me a genius. Forbes put me on their cover. Business schools wanted me to speak. I was no longer nobody. I was David Chen, millionaire. Entrepreneur, the man who built an empire from nothing. But back home, things were falling apart for the Harrisons. I kept tabs on them, quietly, from a distance. Harrison Enterprises had made bad investments. The real estate market crashed. Their biggest projects failed. They were bleeding money. Richard Harrison was desperate. He reached out to investors, tried to secure loans, looked for partners. No one wanted to touch them. They were sinking. And then I saw the email. A formal request from Harrison Enterprises, addressed to Sterling Industries, my company. They wanted a meeting. They needed capital. They needed a partnership. They needed me. I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Mary had no idea who she was about to face. She probably did not even know I was behind Sterling Industries. The press used my full name, David Chen, and most articles focused on my work, not my past. She had no clue. I accepted the meeting. I scheduled it for next week. I told my assistant to make sure everything was perfect. The conference room, the presentation, the contract terms. I wanted everything to be flawless. Because this was not just business. This was personal. I imagined walking into that room. I imagined her face when she realized who I was. I imagined her father's shock. I imagined George's disbelief. I imagined all of it, and it felt like justice. But there was something else too. A part of me, buried deep, still wondered if she ever regretted it. If she ever thought about me. If she ever realized what she lost. I told myself it did not matter. I told myself I was over her. But the truth was, I was not. Not completely. And that scared me more than anything. The night before the meeting, I could not sleep. I lay in my penthouse apartment, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Tomorrow, I would face Mary again. Tomorrow, I would see the woman who broke me, who humiliated me, who told me I was nothing. Tomorrow, I would show her exactly how wrong she was. But why did my chest feel so heavy? I got up and poured myself a glass of whiskey. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows and looked out at the city. It was the same city I had left 3 years ago, but it felt different now. I was different now. I had money, power, respect. Everything I had ever wanted. Everything she said I would never have. So why did I still feel empty? I thought about the day I left. I had packed a single bag, walked out of my apartment, and did not look back. I told myself I was done with her, done with this place, done with the pain. But the truth was, I carried it with me every single day. Every rejection I faced, every obstacle I overcame, every success I achieved, it was all tied to her. She was the ghost that haunted my ambition. She was the fuel that kept me going. And that terrified me. Because what happens when you finally get your revenge? What happens when you prove them wrong? Does the pain go away? Or does it just reveal how much space she still occupies in your heart? I drank the whiskey and felt it burn down my throat. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to walk into that meeting room tomorrow and feel nothing but cold satisfaction. But part of me, the part I tried to bury, still remembered the good times. The late-night conversations. The laughter. The way she looked at me like I mattered. Was any of it real? Or was I just a fool who fell for a lie? My phone buzzed. It was a message from Sarah, my assistant and one of the few people I trusted. She had been with me since the early days, back when Sterling Industries was just an idea and a dream. She knew my story. She knew about Mary. She had seen me at my lowest and stood by me anyway. The message read, "Are you okay? You have been quiet all day." I typed back, "I am fine. Just thinking about tomorrow." She replied immediately, "You do not have to do this. You have nothing to prove to anyone." I stared at her message. She was right. I did not have to do this. I could reject their proposal, move on, let them sink without me. But that would not give me closure. That would not give me the moment I had been working toward for 3 years. I needed to see her face. I needed her to know. I typed back, "I need to do this." She sent a heart emoji and wrote, "Then do it your way. Do not let her take anything else from you." I smiled. Sarah understood. She always did. I put the phone down and closed my eyes. I thought about my journey. The sleepless nights. The failures. The moments I wanted to quit. I thought about the first time someone said yes to my idea. The first time I saw my software succeed. The first time I realized I was actually going to make it. I thought about the moment I signed my first major deal and felt tears in my eyes because I knew I had done it. I had become somebody. But all of it, every single piece of it, was built on the foundation of pain she had given me. And I did not know if that made me strong or broken. I opened my laptop and pulled up the contract we had prepared for Harrison Enterprises. It was fair, maybe even generous. We would invest in their company, help them restructure, give them a chance to survive. But there were conditions. Conditions that would give me control. Conditions that would make them answer to me. Conditions that would make Mary realize exactly who held the power now. I read through it one more time, then closed the laptop. Tomorrow, everything would change. I woke up at 5 in the morning, earlier than usual. I went for a run, trying to clear my head. The city was still asleep, quiet and peaceful. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs ached. I ran until I could not think anymore. Then I went home, showered, and put on my best suit. Charcoal gray, tailored perfectly, expensive but not flashy. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked successful. I looked powerful. I looked like someone Mary would regret losing. But inside, I still felt like the boy she had destroyed. I arrived at the office early. Sarah was already there, setting up the conference room. She looked at me and smiled. "You look good. Confident. Ready." I nodded. "I am ready." She handed me a folder. "Here is everything you need. Financial reports. Contract terms. Talking points. You are going to crush this." I took the folder and sat down in my office. I opened it and stared at the numbers, the projections, the strategies. But my mind was somewhere else. I kept imagining her walking through that door. I kept wondering what she would say. Would she apologize? Would she pretend nothing happened? Would she even recognize me? At 9:30, Sarah knocked on my door. "They are here." My heart stopped. I took a deep breath, stood up, and straightened my tie. This is it. I walked to the conference room. Through the glass walls, I could see them. Richard Harrison, looking older and more tired than I remembered. Elizabeth Harrison, still elegant but with worry in her eyes. George, sitting next to Mary, looking as smug as ever. And Mary. She was wearing a navy blue dress, her hair pulled back, her face calm and composed. She looked the same. Beautiful. Untouchable. The woman who broke me. I opened the door and walked in. Every head turned toward me. Richard stood up first, extending his hand. "Mr. Chen, thank you for meeting with us." I shook his hand, my expression neutral. "Of course. Please. Sit." Everyone sat down. Mary was looking at me, but there was no recognition in her eyes. She had no idea who I was. 3 years had changed me. I was leaner, sharper, more polished. I did not look like the boy she left behind. I sat at the head of the table, opened the folder, and began. "Let us talk about how we can help Harrison Enterprises." And as I spoke, I watched her. I watched her listen. I watched her take notes. I watched her nod along, completely unaware that the man sitting across from her was the nobody she once destroyed. And I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Because in that moment, I realized something. She had forgotten me. But I had never forgotten her. The meeting progressed smoothly. I presented the financial analysis, the market projections, the restructuring timeline. Everything was professional, clinical, devoid of emotion. But inside, my heart was racing. Every time Mary spoke, every time she looked at me with those green eyes, I felt the old wounds opening up again. When the presentation ended, there was a moment of silence. Richard cleared his throat and said, "Mr. Chen, this is very thorough. We appreciate your time and consideration." I nodded. "Take the weekend to review everything. We can finalize terms next week." As they gathered their things to leave, Mary lingered behind. She looked at me with an expression I could not quite read. Curiosity? Suspicion? Something else? "Mr. Chen," she said softly, "I know this might sound strange, but have we really never met before?" I held her gaze, keeping my face expressionless. "I am certain we have not, Miss Harrison." She bit her lip, still uncertain. "It is just, there is something about your voice. Something familiar." My heart pounded in my chest, but I kept my composure. "Perhaps I remind you of someone." She nodded slowly, still not entirely convinced. "Perhaps." George appeared in the doorway, looking impatient. "Mary. We need to go. We have another meeting in an hour." She glanced at him, then back at me. "Thank you again, Mr. Chen. I look forward to working with you." "The pleasure is mine," I replied. As they left, Sarah came back into the room. She had been watching from her office. "That was intense. How are you holding up?" I loosened my tie and sat down heavily. "I do not know. I thought I would feel vindicated, powerful, in control. But I just feel tired." She sat across from me. "That is because closure is not about control, David. It is about acceptance. And you have not accepted what happened yet. You are still fighting it." I looked at her. "How do I accept it?" She smiled gently. "By forgiving yourself for loving someone who did not deserve it. By letting go of the idea that you need her to acknowledge your worth. By realizing that you already won the moment you walked out of the city and built something from nothing." I closed my eyes and leaned back in my chair. Her words made sense, but they did not ease the ache in my chest. Because the truth was, I did not just want success. I wanted Mary to see it. I wanted her to feel the regret, the loss, the realization of what she threw away. And I hated myself for still caring. The meeting lasted an hour. I laid out the terms clearly, professionally, without emotion. Sterling Industries would provide the capital Harrison Enterprises needed, but in exchange, we would take a 40% stake in the company and have final say on all major decisions. It was a fair deal, considering they were on the verge of collapse. But it also meant they would no longer have full control. They would answer to me. Richard listened carefully, nodding occasionally. Elizabeth looked uncomfortable but said nothing. George leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, clearly annoyed. And Mary. She watched me with curiosity. Like she was trying to figure me out. When I finished, Richard cleared his throat. "Mr. Chen, these terms are reasonable, but 40% is significant. Is there any room for negotiation?" I looked him directly in the eyes. "No. This is not a negotiation. This is a lifeline. You can take it or leave it." The room went silent. George scoffed. "That is a bit arrogant. Do you not think?" I turned to him, my expression cold. "Arrogance would be me walking away and watching your company crumble. This is business. And in business, you either adapt or you disappear." He clenched his jaw but said nothing. Mary finally spoke. Her voice was calm, measured. "Mr. Chen, I appreciate your directness. But I have to ask, why are you interested in Harrison Enterprises? There are plenty of other companies in better shape. Why us?" I paused. This was the moment I had been waiting for. I could reveal myself right now. I could watch the realization wash over her face. I could see her shock, her regret, her disbelief. But something stopped me. Some instinct told me to wait, to let this play out a little longer. I smiled slightly. Because I believe in second chances. Everyone deserves a chance to rebuild, to prove they can be better. Do you not agree? Mary held my gaze for a moment, then nodded. "I do." "Good. Then we have a deal." Richard hesitated, then extended his hand. "We will review the contract and get back to you by the end of the week." I shook his hand. "Take your time. But not too much." They stood up to leave. George gave me a dismissive glance as he walked past. Elizabeth thanked me politely. Richard looked defeated. And Mary. She paused at the door and looked back at me. "Mr. Chen, have we met before? You seem familiar." My heart skipped a beat. I kept my face neutral. "I do not think so. I have one of those faces." She smiled, a small, uncertain smile. Maybe. And then she left. I sat there for a long time after they were gone, staring at the empty chairs. Sarah came in and sat across from me. So, how did it go? I exhaled slowly. She did not recognize me. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I do not know. She leaned forward. David, listen to me. You have already won. You built this empire. You became someone they could never ignore. You do not need her to recognize you to validate that. I nodded, but her words did not ease the knot in my chest. Because the truth was, I wanted her to know. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she had done. I wanted her to see me and realize she had destroyed someone who became unstoppable. Later that evening, I went to a bar downtown. I needed to think, to process everything. I ordered a drink and sat in a corner booth. The place was quiet, dimly lit. The kind of spot where people came to disappear for a while. I was halfway through my second drink when someone slid into the booth across from me. I looked up, annoyed, ready to tell them to leave. But I froze. It was Mary. She was alone, no George, no family, just her. She looked at me with those sharp green eyes and said, I hope you do not mind. I needed to talk to you. I recovered quickly, leaning back in my seat. Miss Harrison. This is unexpected. She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. I know this is inappropriate, showing up like this. But I could not stop thinking about our meeting today. There is something about you, something I cannot quite place. I took a sip of my drink. What do you want to talk about? She hesitated, then said, I want to know why you are really helping us. You are young, successful, you could invest in anyone. So why a failing company like ours? What is in it for you? I studied her for a moment. She was scared. I could see it beneath the confident exterior. She was afraid of losing everything. And that fear made her vulnerable. I leaned forward. Let me ask you something, Miss Harrison. Do you believe people can change? Do you think someone who was once nothing can become something? She frowned, confused by the question. I suppose so. Why? Because 3 years ago, I was nothing. I had no money, no power, no future. Someone told me I would never amount to anything. They laughed at me, humiliated me, erased me, and I left. I disappeared. And I built this. I gestured around, referring to my success. So, yes, I believe in second chances. Because I lived one. Mary stared at me, something flickering in her eyes. Recognition? Doubt? I could not tell. She whispered, Who told you that? I smiled, cold and distant. Does it matter? She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, her phone rang. She glanced at it, then looked at me. I have to go. But thank you, Mr. Chen. For the opportunity. For believing in us. She stood up and walked away, leaving me alone with my drink and my thoughts. Sarah called me later that night. I just got word. Harrison Enterprises accepted the deal. You are officially their largest stakeholder. I closed my eyes. Good. David, what are you going to do now? I did not answer right away. Because honestly, I did not know. I had spent 3 years planning this moment, but now that it was here, I felt lost. Revenge was supposed to feel satisfying. It was supposed to fill the emptiness. But all I felt was tired. I will figure it out, I finally said. After I hung up, I stood by the window and looked out at the city again. Somewhere out there, Mary was going home, probably thinking about our conversation. Somewhere out there, George was probably comforting her, telling her everything would be fine. Somewhere out there, my past and my present were colliding, and I had no idea how to control it. But one thing was certain. The game was far from over. And the next move was mine. The deal went through within a week. Sterling Industries officially became the majority stakeholder in Harrison Enterprises. I called a meeting with the board of directors to discuss the restructuring plan. This time, the meeting was in my building. In my boardroom. On my terms. The power dynamic had shifted completely. They arrived at 10 in the morning. Richard, Elizabeth, Mary, George, and a few other executives I did not care about. They all looked nervous except George, who tried to maintain his arrogant composure. Mary wore a black suit. Professional and sharp. She looked directly at me as she entered, and for a split second, I thought I saw something in her eyes. Suspicion, recognition, I could not tell. I began the meeting with a presentation outlining the financial restructuring, cost-cutting measures, and new strategic partnerships. Everything was calculated, professional, airtight. They had no room to argue. Richard nodded along, looking relieved that someone competent was finally taking charge. Elizabeth seemed grateful. But Mary kept staring at me, like she was trying to solve a puzzle. After the presentation, I opened the floor for questions. George was the first to speak. Mr. Chen, with all due respect, some of these changes feel aggressive. Are you sure you are not overstepping? I met his gaze without flinching. I am not overstepping. I am saving your company. If you have a better plan, I am happy to hear it. Otherwise, I suggest you trust the process. He clenched his jaw but said nothing. Mary raised her hand. Mr. Chen, I have a question. What happens to the current leadership structure? Are you planning to replace any of us? I leaned back in my chair. That depends. If the current leadership is willing to adapt and follow the new direction, they can stay. If not, changes will be made. She nodded slowly. Understood. The meeting ended an hour later. As everyone filed out, I asked Mary to stay behind. She looked surprised but agreed. George gave me a suspicious look as he left, but I ignored him. Once the room was empty, Mary turned to me. What is this about, Mr. Chen? I walked over to the window, hands in my pockets, and stared out at the city. Do you remember the charity gala 3 years ago? Her brow furrowed. The gala? I have attended many galas. Which one? The one where you told someone they were nobody. Where you humiliated them in front of everyone. Where you destroyed them because they were not good enough for you. Her face went pale. She stared at me, her mouth slightly open. Realization slowly dawning. No. No. It cannot be. I turned to face her, and for the first time, I let her see the truth in my eyes. Hello, Mary. She took a step back, her hand covering her mouth. David. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Surprise. She shook her head, disbelief written all over her face. I do not understand. You are Mr. Chen. You are the founder of Sterling Industries. You are successful. You are everything you said I would never be. I finished for her. Tears filled her eyes. David, I did not know. Of course you did not know. Because you forgot about me the moment I walked out of your life. But I never forgot you. I never forgot what you said. What you did. And I used it. I used every ounce of pain you gave me and turned it into this. I gestured around the room. So yes, Mary. I am successful. I am powerful. I am everything you said I could never be. And now, I own your family's company. I own your future. How does that feel? She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. David, I am sorry. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I was wrong. I did not mean those things. I was under so much pressure from my family. From George. From everyone. I made a mistake. A mistake? I stepped closer to her. My voice low and sharp. You did not make a mistake, Mary. You made a choice. You chose to humiliate me. You chose to break me. You chose George over me because he was rich and I was not. Do not stand there and pretend you were a victim. I was scared, she whispered. I was scared of what people would think. I was scared of losing my family's approval. I was scared of choosing you and failing. So you destroyed me instead? I laughed bitterly. How noble. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. I know I hurt you. I know I was wrong. But please, David, please believe me when I say I regret it. I have regretted it every single day since you left. I stared at her, searching her face for any sign of deception. But all I saw was pain. Real, raw pain. And for a moment, just a moment, I felt something crack inside me. Because despite everything, despite the anger and the hurt, part of me still cared. Part of me still remembered the girl I fell in love with. But then I remembered her words, you are nobody. And the crack sealed shut. It is too late for regrets, Mary. What is done is done. She wiped her tears and straightened up, trying to regain her composure. So, what now? Are you going to destroy us? Is that your plan? To take everything from me like I took everything from you? I could dismantle Harrison Enterprises piece by piece. I could ruin your family, humiliate you the way you humiliated me. But I will not. Because I am not like you. I do not destroy people for sport. Then what do you want? I want you to know what it feels like to need someone you once threw away. I want you to understand that the nobody you laughed at is now the somebody you depend on. I want you to live with that. She looked at me, broken, defeated. You have changed, David. You are colder now. Harder. You made me this way. She nodded slowly, accepting the truth. I did. Before she could say anything else, the door opened and George walked in. Mary, we need to. He stopped when he saw her tears. What is going on here? Mary quickly wiped her face. Nothing. We were just discussing business. George looked between us, suspicion all over his face. He turned to me. What did you say to her? I smiled coldly. Just the truth. Something you might not be familiar with. His face turned red. Who do you think you are, talking to me like that? I am the man who holds your future in his hands. Remember that the next time you walk into my building. He took a step toward me, fists clenched, but Mary grabbed his arm. George, stop. Let us just go. He glared at me one last time before letting her pull him toward the door. But before they left, Mary turned back and looked at me. Her voice was barely a whisper. I am sorry, David. For everything. I said nothing. I just watched them leave. After they were gone, Sarah came in. She looked at me, concerned. Are you okay? I sat down heavily in my chair. I thought this would feel better. I thought finally confronting her, finally making her see what she lost, would give me closure, but it does not. It just feels empty. Sarah walked over and placed a hand on my shoulder. That is because revenge does not heal, David. It just shows you how much you have been carrying all along. I closed my eyes and exhaled. What do I do now? You move forward. You let go. You stop letting her define you. I nodded, but deep down, I knew it was not that simple. Because Mary was not just a person I used to know. She was the reason I became who I was. And I did not know how to separate the two. That night, I received a text from an unknown number. It was Mary. It said, "Can we talk? Please. Just once." I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but part of me, the part that still remembered the good times, wanted answers. I typed back, "Tomorrow. Noon. The park where we used to walk." She replied immediately. "Thank you." I put the phone down and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow. I would face her again. Not as her savior. Not as her enemy. But as the man she destroyed and rebuilt. And maybe, just maybe, I would finally get the closure I needed. But what I did not know was that tomorrow would bring something I never expected. Something that would change everything once more. Because George had been listening outside that boardroom door. And he had heard everything. The next morning, I woke up to my phone ringing. It was Sarah, and she sounded panicked. "David, turn on the news. Now." I grabbed the remote and turned on the television. My face filled the screen. The headline read, Sterling Industries CEO David Chen. Former nobody seeks revenge on ex-fiancée. My blood ran cold. George had gone to the press. He had twisted the story, making me look like a vindictive ex-lover who was using his wealth to destroy the woman who rejected him. He painted Mary as the victim, himself as the protective boyfriend, and me as the villain. My phone exploded with calls. Investors, partners, board members, all wanting answers. The press was camped outside my building. My reputation, everything I had built, was being torn apart in real time. I called my lawyer immediately. "We need to issue a statement. Now." But Sarah interrupted. "David, there is more. George filed a lawsuit. He is accusing you of corporate manipulation and personal harassment. He is asking for damages and demanding you step down from Harrison Enterprises." I felt rage boil inside me. That bastard, he was trying to destroy me the same way Mary had 3 years ago. But this time, I was not powerless. This time, I had resources. This time, I would fight back. I called an emergency press conference. I stood in front of cameras and reporters, my expression calm and controlled. I addressed the accusations directly, presenting documents that showed the deal with Harrison Enterprises was entirely legal and beneficial for both parties. I explained that George was a manipulator who was trying to deflect attention from his own failures. But then I did something unexpected. I told the truth. I told them about the gala 3 years ago. About Mary's words. About my journey from nothing to everything. I laid it all bare, holding nothing back. "I am not here for revenge," I said, looking directly into the camera. "I am here because I refuse to let one moment define my entire life. Yes, I was hurt. Yes, I was angry. But I used that pain to build something meaningful. And if that makes me a villain, then so be it. But I will not apologize for succeeding." The room erupted with questions, but I walked away. I had said everything I needed to say. The public reaction was mixed. Some called me petty. Others called me inspirational. But the one thing everyone agreed on was that my story was real. And in a world full of fake success stories, authenticity mattered. Within days, the truth about George began to surface. Investigative journalists dug into his background and found a pattern of financial fraud, manipulation, and lies. He had been using the Harrison family's money to cover his own debts. He had been cheating on Mary for months. He was not the victim. He was the villain. The lawsuit was dropped. George disappeared from public view, disgraced and defeated. And Mary, she reached out one final time. I arrived at the park, 15 minutes early. It was the same place where we used to walk 3 years ago, back when I still believed in us. The trees were taller now, the paths more worn. Everything looked the same, but everything felt different. I sat on a bench near the fountain and waited. The autumn air was cool, the sky overcast. People walked by with their dogs, their children, their lives. None of them knew that the man sitting alone on that bench was about to close a chapter that had defined him for years. Mary arrived exactly at noon. She was wearing jeans and a simple sweater, no makeup, her hair down. She looked younger, more vulnerable. She saw me and walked over slowly, like she was afraid I would disappear. She sat down beside me, leaving a careful distance between us. "Thank you for meeting me." I did not look at her. I just stared at the fountain. "What do you want, Mary?" She took a deep breath. "I want to explain. I want you to understand why I did what I did." I turned to her, my expression hard. "I already know why. You were ashamed of me. I was not good enough for your world. So you chose George, and you humiliated me to make sure I stayed gone." She shook her head, tears already forming. "It was not that simple, David. I was weak. I let my family control me. I let their expectations crush what I really wanted, and what I wanted was you." I laughed bitterly. "You have a funny way of showing it." I know I was cruel. I know I hurt you in ways I can never take back. But you have to believe me when I say I regretted it, the moment you left. I tried to find you. I called. I searched, but you were gone. You vanished, and I thought I had lost you forever. And now that you need me, you suddenly care?" I asked coldly. "No." She looked at me, her eyes desperate. "I cared the whole time. George and I, we are done. I found out about everything. The cheating, the stealing, the lies. I was so blind, David. I chose the wrong person. I chose money and status over real love, and I have paid for it every single day since. I do hate you," I said quietly. "Or at least, I thought I did. But the truth is, I do not know what I feel anymore. You broke me, Mary. You made me believe I was worthless. And it took me 3 years to prove to myself that I was not." "And you did," she whispered. "You became everything I knew you could be. You were always brilliant, David. Always capable. I just could not see past my own fear." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the regret in her eyes, but regret was not enough. Regret did not erase the pain. Regret did not give me back the years I spent rebuilding myself. "I am sorry" is not enough, Mary. You cannot just apologize and expect everything to be okay. "I know," she said, her voice breaking. "I know it is not enough. But I had to try. I had to tell you that I was wrong. That you were never nobody. You were always someone. I was just too blind to see it." We sat in silence for a long time. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves above us. Somewhere in the distance, a child laughed. Life went on, indifferent to our pain. Finally, I spoke. "What do you want from me, Mary? Do you want forgiveness? Do you want me to say it is okay? Because it is not. It will never be okay." "I do not want forgiveness," she said softly. "I just want you to know the truth. That I was wrong. That I am sorry. And that I hope, someday, you can find peace." I stood up, looking down at her. "I already found peace. I found it the day I stopped letting you define me. I found it the day I realized my worth was not tied to your approval. I found it the day I became successful not for revenge, but because I wanted to prove to myself that I could." She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "I am glad. I am glad you found it." I took a deep breath. "Mary, I am going to help your family. Not because I owe you anything, but because I made a promise to myself that I would not become the kind of person who destroys others. But do not mistake my kindness for forgiveness. We are done. Whatever we had, whatever we could have been, it is over." She nodded, accepting it. "I understand." I started to walk away, but she called after me. "David, wait." I turned back. "One last thing," she said, standing up. "I want you to know that seeing what you became, seeing how strong you are, it taught me something. It taught me that I need to stop looking for validation from others. I need to find my own worth, the way you found yours." I looked at her for a long moment. Good. Then maybe something good came out of all this pain after all. And with that, I walked away. I did not look back. I did not hesitate. Because for the first time in 3 years, I felt free. 2 months later, Harrison Enterprises was back on its feet. The restructuring plan worked. The company was profitable again. Richard stepped down and retired, finally admitting he was too old for the stress. Mary took over as chief executive officer. And to my surprise, she was good at it. She was focused, determined, willing to learn. She proved she was more than just a name. George was arrested. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Embezzlement, fraud, identity theft. He had been running schemes for years, using the Harrison name to con investors. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison. When the verdict was announced, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no joy. Just emptiness. Because revenge, even when justified, never fills the holes that pain creates. Mary sent me one final message after George's sentencing. It said, "Thank you for everything. For saving my family's company. For exposing George. For showing me what real strength looks like. I will spend the rest of my life trying to be half the person you are." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed back one simple sentence. "Be better than the person you were. That is all that matters." She replied with a single word. "Always." I deleted the conversation after that. Not out of anger, but out of closure. That chapter of my life was over. Mary was my past. And I was finally ready to focus on my future. As for me, Sarah and I grew closer. She had been there through everything, never judging, never pushing, just supporting. One night, as we sat in my office reviewing quarterly reports, she looked up at me and said, "You know, for someone who claims to hate emotions, you feel things pretty deeply." I smiled. "Maybe. But I am learning to feel them without letting them control me." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I am proud of you, David. Not because you are successful, but because you chose to be better than the people who hurt you." Those words meant more to me than any business deal, any award, any achievement. Because they came from someone who knew me, really knew me, and still chose to stay. 6 months later, Sterling Industries announced a merger with 3 other tech companies, creating the largest artificial intelligence consortium in the country. The deal was worth $2.3 billion. I was officially one of the youngest billionaires in the nation. The press wanted interviews. Magazines wanted cover stories. Everyone wanted to know the secret to my success. But I gave them all the same answer. There is no secret. Just a choice. The choice to keep going when everything tells you to quit. The choice to believe in yourself when no one else does. The choice to turn pain into power. 1 year after everything began, I received an invitation. Harrison Enterprises was hosting a charity gala. The same event where my life had changed 3 years ago. Mary was inviting me as the keynote speaker. Sarah looked at me when I told her, "Are you going to go?" I thought about it. Part of me wanted to refuse, to leave that place and those memories behind forever. But another part of me, the part that had grown and healed, wanted to face that room one last time. Not as a victim. Not as someone seeking revenge. But as someone who had transcended it all. "Yes," I said. "I am going. But not for her. For me." The night of the gala, I arrived with Sarah on my arm. She wore a stunning red dress, and I wore a tailored black suit. We walked into that ballroom, the same one where I had been destroyed, and this time, every head turned toward us with respect, admiration, curiosity. Mary stood at the front of the room, greeting guests. When she saw me, she smiled. Not the condescending smile from years ago, but a genuine, warm smile of gratitude and respect. She walked over and extended her hand. "Mr. Chen, thank you for coming." I shook her hand. "Miss Harrison, thank you for the invitation." We stood there for a moment. 2 people who had once meant everything to each other. Now polite strangers. And I realized that was okay. People grow. People change. And sometimes, the best thing you can do is let them go. When it was time for my speech, I walked to the podium. The room fell silent. Hundreds of eyes watched me. Waiting. I began. 3 years ago. I stood in this very room. I was a different person then. Younger, more naive, more broken. Someone told me I was nobody. That I would never amount to anything. That I was not good enough. And I believed them. For a moment, I let their words define me. I paused, looking out at the crowd. But then I made a choice. I chose to prove them wrong. Not for revenge. Not for validation. But for myself. Because I realized that no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. And I stopped consenting. The room was completely silent now. I built Sterling Industries from nothing. I worked 3 jobs. I slept in my car. I failed more times than I can count. But I kept going. Because success is not about talent or luck or connections. It is about refusing to quit when quitting is the easiest thing to do. I looked directly at Mary. To the person who told me I was nobody, I want to say thank you. Thank you for pushing me to become someone I never thought I could be. Thank you for showing me that the only approval I need is my own. Thank you for teaching me that pain is not the end, it is the beginning. Tears streamed down Mary's face, but she was smiling. I continued. And to everyone in this room who has ever been told they are not enough, I want you to know something. You are enough. You have always been enough. The only person who needs to believe that is you. The room erupted in applause. People stood, cheering, some crying. Sarah was beaming at me from the front row. And in that moment, I felt it. True, complete closure. After the event, as Sarah and I walked out into the cool night air, she squeezed my hand. You did it. You really, truly did it. I looked up at the stars, feeling lighter than I had in years. Yes, I did. 3 years ago, Mary told me I was nobody. Tonight, I stood in the same room where she destroyed me and proved that I was always somebody. Not because of money or power or success, but because I chose to believe it. And that choice, that single decision to value myself, changed everything. As we drove away from the gala, Sarah asked, "Any regrets?" I thought about it. About the pain, the struggle, the years of fighting. About Mary, George, all of it. No, I said finally. No regrets. Because every single moment, good and bad, made me who I am today. And I like who I am. She smiled. Good. Because I love who you are. We drove into the night, leaving the past behind where it belonged. I had won. Not against Mary, not against George, but against the version of myself that once believed I was not enough. I was enough. I always had been. And now, finally, I knew it.